We've all played that game, right? What would you do if you were stranded on a deserted island? It's a classic survival fantasy. But for one of the biggest YouTubers on the planet, this wasn't a game. It became a very real and just incredibly punishing reality. I mean, just listen to that. That's the moment it all boiled down to. A desperate all-or-nothing statement made out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. But to really understand how they got to this point, this level of sheer exhaustion and grit, we gotta rewind. How on earth did a group of YouTubers end up in a situation this dire? So the mission, it sounded simple, but the execution was, well, anything but. Mr. Beast and his friends get dropped on this remote island with one single objective: build a sailboat completely from scratch, and then somehow navigate through treacherous open water to get home. This brings up the most obvious question in the world, right? For a mission this insanely dangerous, you'd think you'd bring an expert, or, at least someone with some kind of experience. And here it is. The answer is just a massive no. A hard no. With the one exception of a friend who had sorta built a boat once, they were complete novices. We're talking a group of YouTubers, not sailors, deciding to take on the Pacific Ocean. It's wild. But let's be super clear here. Before they could even dream about battling the ocean, they had to survive the island itself. And that was a challenge all on its own. The clock was ticking, their water was running low, and the environment was, frankly, trying to kill them. And these dangers were no joke. We're talking seriously venomous snakes like the fer-de-lance, aggressive spiders, and maybe the most relentless enemy of all, the heat. Just this crushing, energy-sucking heat that made every single little task feel absolutely monumental. Yeah, this was not some fun camping trip. No one's quote just puts their physical misery right into perspective. They were in a constant losing battle with the elements, exhausted and just covered in bites before the main event had even kicked off. So, with basic survival kind of figured out, the real work started: building a boat. But they didn't have nice lumber and power tools. No, their materials had to come from whatever they could find laying around. They were actually pretty methodical about it. First, they built a tiny little model just to see if the concept would even work. Then came this seriously grueling work of scavenging for bamboo in that dangerous jungle and lashing everything together, just hoping and praying their knots would hold up against the ocean. And this is where the story takes this really fascinating turn. Their most valuable asset wasn't some strong wood from the island. Nope. It was the plastic barrels and other trash that had washed ashore. They were literally turning pollution into their salvation. This quote, this is the exact moment their whole attitude shifted. They put the basic frame in the water, and it floated. It actually floated. For the very first time, this crazy, impossible idea felt real. You can just feel that wave of relief. So after a full week of this exhausting labor, the boat was done. But building it, that was only half the battle. Now came the voyage. A grueling, day-long odyssey against the immense, raw power of the sea. Okay, so their main goal was to cross the channel. And it's not just open water. It's a specific zone where the currents are unbelievably strong, with more than enough power to just yank their tiny homemade raft sideways and pull it out into the endless ocean. So here's the warning from Hayes, the guy with the most experience on the team. He knew this was it. This was the make-or-break moment. The only thing standing between them and getting swept away were their own muscles. And get this, by the time they even got to this treacherous channel, they had already been rowing for 7 straight hours. 7 hours. They were walking into the hardest part of the entire journey, already on the edge of total collapse. This is the human cost, right here. It wasn't just about being tired. It was about pushing their bodies to the absolute breaking point. Seasickness, muscle failure, dehydration. They were fighting all of that while just trying to keep the boat inching forward. So for hours and hours, they fought. And against all odds, they actually started winning. It was a miracle. A favorable tide started helping them, pushing them toward their destination. The finish line was finally in sight. Man, this timeline just lays out the brutal emotional roller coaster they were on. At hour 10, they're thinking, we got this. Victory feels certain. But then, nature just decides to remind them who's really in charge. That tide, their greatest ally, suddenly becomes their greatest enemy. This just visualizes how cruel the whole situation was. After 11 hours of nonstop work, they were half a mile away. I mean, close enough to swim. But the current had shifted. All their paddling now was only keeping them from being swept backwards. They were stuck, just watching their goals slip further and further away. You can just hear the absolute heartbreak in these words. The physical exhaustion is one thing, but the psychological gut punch of getting that agonizingly close only to fail, that's something else entirely. It was over. But the story doesn't really end with defeat. It ends with this moment of reflection from Mr. Beast. It's not about the failure, it's about the lesson he learned from it. This incredible, brutal ordeal, it wasn't a loss, it was fuel. This entire journey was a test of human endurance against the elements. They pushed themselves to the absolute brink, but in the end, nature had the final say. And it leaves us with this huge question, right? When pure ambition and grit go head-to-head with the raw, indifferent power of the natural world, which one is going to bend first? It's a powerful reminder that sometimes, no matter how hard we fight, some forces are just way too big to overcome.